Hi, I'm Beth Rodden. I'm an ambassador for Outdoor Research. I'm a climber, and I'm going to be answering some of your questions that you asked me on Instagram. So let's just get started. Ooh, this one's good. There's a couple questions about this. It said, tell me about your Ridgeback. Signed, another outdoorsy Ridgy mama. So we're on our third rescue Ridgeback, which is our dog, Bodhi. He's like the antithesis to our last Ridgeback, Max. I don't know how many of you have been following me long enough to remember Max, but he was like this quiet, subdued, really chill dog. And then Bodhi's this kind of like disaster, spatially unaware goofball. So both lovely, both have their own pros and cons. Okay, here's another question that says, if you feel okay sharing how your healing from PTSD is going. I know the pandemic was really triggering. I'm always happy to talk about that. I think talking openly about mental health is really important. I know that after I got kidnapped, the climbing community had a lot of bravado around it. And so I didn't go to therapy because I was really ashamed by that. So I think talking about it really helps. But it's going good. Like through the pandemic, I continued to talk to a therapist and try and work through that. And so I don't think it's like I've reached the end. I feel like for me, at least, I'm lucky enough to be able to afford therapy. And I think it's probably just going to be like something that I'll have to tune up and do, so often throughout my life. Another question says, did you always know you wanted kids? And if not, what made you want them? I feel like I didn't always know I wanted kids. In fact, I thought for a long time I wouldn't have them just because the way I pursued professional climbing was like a very selfish pursuit. It was like everything had to be lined up a certain way, like projecting had to be a certain way, all that sort of thing. So it wasn't until like I had like 4 years of like cascading kind of like career altering injuries that I felt like there might be a different way and a different path in life. And so then that's when I started, talking with my husband about if we wanted to start to try to have a family and go from there. And yeah, it's been totally life altering. I'm not like one of those evangelical moms that's like everybody has to have kids, but for me, it's been definitely the thing that has led to the biggest transformation in my life. So here's one that says, how come you always go back to France to climb? Anywhere else you want to go? I don't know. When you found like the best spot, you kind of just return to it. No, but in all seriousness, like I feel like France is a place that I always do want to go if we can, if we're fortunate enough to do that. And then we have traveled a lot otherwise, usually before our son started school, we'd go over to Europe or abroad for 3 months and we'd start in France and then go to a handful of other countries. But I'd love to go back to South Africa and Norway and Switzerland. So there's other places, but right now France is kind of always the top of the list. Here's another one that says, is it possible for regular people to be a mom and keep climbing/adventuring? I want kids, but I fear what I'll lose. I totally get that. I think that was a huge fear for me, along with like kind of like letting go of the control over my body, which as athletes, we all know how to like use and manipulate. And it's kind of like this vehicle for a lot of things that we want to do in life. So yes, it's definitely still possible. There's a million ways to raise kids. The way that we're raising our son, like I don't feel any lack of adventure. I know people that kind of don't skip a beat and they go on these huge expeditions, or I know people that totally stop climbing. So there's like a whole range, and I think it's, every family's different, and however you decide to try and raise your kid, you'll, be able to do. Advice for a beginning climber who's feeling really discouraged after taking an indoor climbing class. I had a couple of these questions actually from women. And I think climbing is booming in popularity so much that there's a lot of different options. I know that I usually teach a clinic series at the Bay Area gyms every summer. There's so many different women's festivals. There's so many different female coaches right now and trainers. that it's like a relationship, right? Like you're not going to get along with every single person. So I wouldn't like just stop with the first bad one that you have. I'd try and go again. Also, if you can get a friend to go with you, that always really helps, because then you're like, safety in numbers. How do you think men can support women in the climbing community? It's an awesome question. I always climbed with men for probably like the first 15 to 20 years of my career. There just weren't that many women, but also like I was like, had some deep insecurities and competitiveness with women going on. But I think that, if men can help support all these like women's clinics and women's festivals and things like that, it just provides more fish in the pond. Like there's more women out there, and then of course you're going to be able to go and find more partners. And I probably climb like 95% of my days now with just like an all-female crew, which is really fun. I've gotten a couple of questions like this about living in Yosemite. So this one in particular says, what's it like living in Yosemite, especially regarding summer tourism? So living in Yosemite is amazing. Like we're so lucky to be able to do it. And our son goes to school there. But let's see, there's pros and cons to every place you live. The pro is like, we live in Yosemite, like literally we can climb on good weather days. It's, I think, very biased opinion, it's the most beautiful place on earth. The cons are the community is super transient. The Park Service is a lot like the military, and that like to get a promotion, you usually move. And so it's like our community is really transient, which for somebody like me, like I don't like change. It's like really unsettling. It's hard. And I'm also an introvert, so to have to make new friends every few years is hard. The benefit to that is like you get to meet a lot of cool people, because they're like, you get a lot of new people moving in. Same with the climbing community. It's kind of like feast or famine. Everybody's there in the spring or fall. So it's like a little overwhelming, but also thrilling. And then everybody leaves in the summer and the winter. So it's like a little bit lonely. There are like 10 questions about my book. It's like book update. How about a book update? Definitely a book update. So it's cool that all of you have been following along long enough about my book. It's actually getting there. I feel like gonna turn it into the publisher this summer. And from what I understand, like a rough timeline is like once that's done, then it's like a year to production. So hopefully like late spring to early fall 2023, but it has taken 5 years so far. So I don't know, maybe we'll just add another year onto there. But that's the book update. This other one says tips for becoming a sponsored outdoor athlete. That has changed so much since I became a sponsored outdoor athlete, like, I don't know, 25 years ago. So, when I started, it was like, there was no social media. It was all about the magazines. It was all about like how you were actually moving the sport forward, and the magazines did the talking for you. And you didn't really have to like talk about your accomplishments. There was no real like brand. And now I think it's like how much you can give back, to the community. It's like, how can you use your voice or your platform to really, try and benefit the community, whether that's like moving forward with inclusivity or whether you're actually pushing the level of the sport forward. So I feel like there's a lot of things, but yeah, it's like there's no one path. Even 25 years ago when I started, it's kind of like if you can find your own path and if that aligns with companies, then you'll make it work.